I stood at Calder's grave on the first anniversary of his death, holding white lilies that trembled in my shaking hands. The morning fog clung to the cemetery like a shroud, making everything feel dreamlike and unreal. Marshall Dwyer, the caretaker, had called me 20 minutes earlier with news that made no sense. When I arrived, I understood why his voice had cracked with panic. The marble slab covering my brother's tomb lay cracked open, split down the middle like someone had taken a sledgehammer to it. The tomb itself gaped empty, a dark mouth screaming silence. Marshall stood nearby, refusing to meet my eyes. His boots were caked with fresh mud that matched the prints scattered around the grave. It was like this when I came in this morning. He stammered, but I saw the lie in his trembling jaw. Before I could speak, Linnea Marwood, Calder's widow, appeared behind me. Her voice dripped with contempt as she addressed the small crowd gathering. Evelyn, stop overreacting, he's dead. Maybe you just imagined his coffin. Heat flooded my cheeks as people whispered and stared. They looked at me like I was a delusional old woman, losing her grip on reality. Marshall pulled me aside as Linnea continued her performance of the grieving widow for the curious onlookers. His weathered face had gone pale, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool morning air. He glanced over his shoulder twice, before leaning close enough that I could smell the coffee on his breath. It wasn't supposed to be today, he whispered urgently. The words hit me like cold water. I grabbed his arm, my fingers digging into his jacket. What wasn't supposed to be today? What are you talking about? But he pulled away, shaking his head violently. I can't. I shouldn't have said anything. Just go home, Mrs. Marwood, please. He practically ran back to his maintenance shed, leaving me standing there with questions burning in my throat. Linnea shot me a triumphant look before climbing into her expensive car. The crowd dispersed, probably eager to spread gossip about poor, confused Evelyn. I walked back to my car on legs that felt like water. My mind spinning, something was terribly wrong, and everyone seemed to know except me. My hands shook so badly, I could barely grip the steering wheel as I drove home. Marshall's words echoed in my head like a warning bell. The streets of our small town blurred past as I tried to make sense of what I had seen. An empty tomb didn't just happen. Someone had opened it deliberately, recently, with purpose. I pulled into my driveway and sat there for several minutes, trying to calm my racing heart. Inside, I headed straight for Calder's study. The room I had kept exactly as he left it. Books lined the shelves, his reading glasses still sat on the desk, and his old chessboard occupied the corner table. I had played chess with him every Sunday for 30 years. As I ran my fingers over the smooth wooden pieces, something caught my eye. An envelope, cream-colored and slightly yellowed, was wedged between the board and its velvet lining. I pulled it free with trembling fingers. My name was written across the front, in Calder's distinctive handwriting. Open only if something happens to me. I tore open the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single brass key, heavy and cold against my palm. The number 87R was engraved on its surface, the letters worn but still legible. I turned it over and over, searching for more clues, but the key offered nothing else. My phone buzzed on the desk, making me jump. I grabbed it, hoping somehow it might be Calder, even though I knew that was impossible. Instead, Linnea's name flashed on the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. "What do you want, Linnea?" My voice came out harder than I intended. She laughed, a cruel sound that made my skin crawl. "Just checking if you've recovered from your little scene at the cemetery." Really, Evelyn, it was embarrassing. Calder didn't leave you anything. Not even a goodbye, the words stung. Designed to hurt and humiliate. She had always resented the close relationship Calder and I shared. Before I could respond, she hung up. I stared at the key in my hand, its weight suddenly feeling like proof. Proof that my brother had left me something after all. Something important enough to hide. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me bolt upright, heart pounding. At dawn, I forced myself to get up and make coffee, trying to establish some normalcy in a world that had tilted sideways. I decided to run errands, hoping the mundane tasks would clear my head. As I drove through town, I noticed a dark sedan following me. At first, I thought it was paranoia, but when I took 3 random turns and it stayed behind me, I knew someone was watching me. I pulled into a gas station and parked near the pumps. The sedan pulled in across the lot. 2 men sat inside, both wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. I marched over to their car, my fear transforming into anger. "Why are you following me?" I demanded. knocking on the driver's window. They stared straight ahead, pretending I didn't exist. But as the driver shifted, his sleeve rode up. There, tattooed on his wrist in black ink, was a number I now recognized. 87R, the same code from Calder's key. My blood turned to ice. I drove home faster than I should have, checking my rearview mirror constantly. The sedan didn't follow me this time, which somehow felt worse. They knew where I lived. They didn't need to follow. I pulled into my driveway and practically ran to my front door. My neighbor, Mrs. Belinda Crowell, called out from her porch, "Evelyn, dear, are you all right? You look pale." I forced a smile, not wanting to involve her in whatever this was. But Belinda crossed her yard anyway. Her face creased with concern. "I've been meaning to tell you something strange," she said quietly. "2 nights ago, I couldn't sleep. I looked out my window and saw someone standing in your driveway." My heart stopped. "Who?" She bit her lip, looking uncomfortable. "This is going to sound crazy, but it looked exactly like your brother. Same height, same build, but Evelyn. He walked with a limp. Calder never limped." "Did he?" My mouth went dry. "No, he didn't." Belinda squeezed my arm sympathetically before heading back to her house. I stood frozen on my porch, key clenched in my fist. Inside, I locked every door and window, my hands moving on autopilot while my mind raced. A man who looked like Calder but walked with a limp. An empty tomb, men with 87R tattoos following me. None of it made sense, but it all connected somehow. I needed answers. I opened my laptop and searched for anything related to 87R, but found nothing useful. Then I remembered something. Years ago, Calder had mentioned a storage facility where he kept important documents. He had been secretive about it. Brushing off my questions, I searched through his papers until I found it, a receipt for a storage unit downtown. The receipt was dated 3 months before his death. My email chimed, making me jump. The sender's address was just a string of random numbers. The subject line was blank. My cursor hovered over it for a long moment before I clicked. The message contained only one sentence, but those 6 words made my blood run cold. "Your brother's death was staged." I read it 3 times, each time hoping the words would change. They didn't. I spent the rest of the day trying to convince myself the email was a sick prank. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was trying to warn me. The next morning, I decided to confront Marshall Dwyer. He knew something, and I was done being patient. I drove to the cemetery, rehearsing what I would say. But when I arrived, ambulances and police cars blocked the entrance. Officers stood in clusters, talking in low voices. My stomach dropped. I parked and hurried toward the cemetery office. A young officer stopped me. "Ma'am, you can't go in there. What happened?" "I need to speak with Marshall Dwyer." The officer's face softened with sympathy. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Mr. Dwyer passed away last night. Heart attack." The world tilted. Heart attack, but I pushed past him anyway. Ignoring his protests, through the office window, I could see Marshall's body on a stretcher. Medical examiners were preparing to move him. Then I saw something that made me stop breathing. Bruises, dark and obvious, circled his neck. That wasn't a heart attack, that was murder. A detective appeared beside me, his presence sudden and quiet. He was tall, maybe 50, with sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. "Mrs. Marwood," his voice was calm. "Professional, I'm Detective Ronan Hale. I was hoping to speak with you." I tore my gaze from Marshall's body. "About what?" "Your brother, Calder." He gestured toward a bench away from the chaos. "Shall we sit?" My legs felt weak. So I nodded. We sat, and he pulled out a photo from his jacket. "We found this in Mr. Dwyer's office. Can you confirm this is your brother?" I looked at the photo and felt the earth drop away. It was Calder, unmistakably him. Same face, same eyes, same small scar above his left eyebrow. But the timestamp at the bottom of the photo read 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, a full year after his funeral. "Where did you get this?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. Detective Hale studied my face carefully. "We've been investigating something unusual, Mrs. Marwood, and I think you might be in danger." "From who?" He stood, tucking the photo away. "That's what we need to find out." Detective Hale drove me to the cemetery storage shed, the small building where Marshall kept maintenance equipment. The door hung open, crime scene tape already stretched across the entrance. Hale ducked under the tape and motioned for me to follow. Inside, the space smelled of oil and earth. Tools lined the walls, and old machinery filled the corners. But Hale walked straight to the back, where a large metal shelving unit stood. He pulled it aside, revealing a trapdoor cut into the concrete floor. My breath caught. "We found this an hour ago," he said, lifting the heavy door. Stairs led down into darkness. He clicked on a flashlight and descended. I hesitated for only a moment before following. The stairs led to a narrow corridor, barely wide enough for one person. The walls were rough concrete, cold and damp. We walked for what felt like forever before the corridor opened into a small chamber. Fresh footprints marked the dusty floor. Empty coffee cups sat on a makeshift table. A thin mattress lay in the corner. Someone had been living here, hiding here recently. Against one wall stood a metal locker, military style and painted gray. The number 87R was stenciled on its door in white paint. My heart hammered as I pulled out Calder's key. It slid into the lock perfectly. Inside the locker, I found a phone. Its screen dark but charged. The moment my fingers touched it, the screen lit up, an incoming call. Unknown number. My hands shook as I answered. "Hello," static crackled, then a voice broke through. A voice I knew better than my own heartbeat. A voice I had heard every day for 60 years, until a year ago when it went silent forever. "Evelyn, don't trust Hale," it was Calder. My brother, who was supposed to be dead, had just spoken to me. My legs gave out, and I sank to the cold floor. The phone slipped from my fingers. Detective Hale stood frozen, his face unreadable in the flashlight's glow. He looked at me, then at the phone, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Something that made me remember Calder's warning. "Who was that?" Hale's voice cut through my shock. I looked up at him, this detective who had appeared so conveniently, who had known exactly where to find this hidden room. Calder's warning echoed in my mind. "Don't trust Hale." "Nobody," I lied, my voice surprisingly steady. "Wrong number." I reached for the phone. But Hale was faster. He picked it up. Examining it closely, the screen had gone dark again. "Locked somehow. Strange place for a wrong number," he said quietly. His eyes met mine, and I saw calculation there. He was trying to figure out how much I knew. I stood on shaking legs, dusting off my pants. "Can we go now? This place is making me claustrophobic." Hale studied me for another long moment before nodding. "Of course," but as he turned toward the stairs, I caught a glimpse of something in his jacket pocket. Another key identical to mine, with the same 87R engraving. He had his own key this whole time. The climb back up felt endless. When we finally reached the surface, I made an excuse about feeling ill and needing to go home. Hale offered to drive me, but I insisted on taking my own car. He watched me leave, his expression unreadable. I drove home with my mind racing, checking the mirrors constantly. Calder was alive, my brother, who I had mourned for a year, who I had seen lowered into the ground, was alive. But if Calder was alive, whose body had we buried? I pulled into my driveway as the sun began to set. The house felt different now, less like a sanctuary and more like a trap. I locked myself inside and went straight to Calder's study. There had to be more clues, more answers hidden somewhere. I searched through his desk drawers, his bookshelves, his filing cabinet. Hours passed before I found it, tucked inside an old medical textbook, another envelope. This one contained a document, an official-looking form with letterhead from the hospital where Calder had died. It was a consent form for something called a transport, dated the day before his death. The signature at the bottom was supposed to be Calder's, but I knew my brother's handwriting. This signature was a forgery. I stared at the forged signature, my mind working through the implications. Only one person could forge Calder's handwriting well enough to fool officials. Linnea. She had practiced his signature for years, handling his business correspondence when he was too busy. She was the attending physician's friend. She had access to everything. The humiliation I had felt at the cemetery transformed into cold, burning anger. Linnea hadn't just stolen Calder's signature. She had orchestrated something far worse. At the bottom of the form, written in tiny letters, was a phrase, 87R return to origin. I photographed the document with my phone, then hid it back where I found it. If Hale came searching, I didn't want him to know what I had discovered. My phone buzzed, another email from the anonymous sender. This one contained an address. Nothing else. I recognized it immediately. Our childhood home, abandoned for 15 years since our parents died. Someone wanted me to go there. Despite every instinct screaming at me to stay safe, I grabbed my keys. The drive to our childhood home took 30 minutes through increasingly rural roads. Darkness had fallen completely by the time I pulled up to the overgrown driveway. The house loomed against the night sky, Windows dark and empty. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering courage, then I saw it, a faint light moving inside. Like a flashlight beam, someone was already here. I got out quietly, leaving my car door slightly ajar to avoid noise. The front door stood open, creaking slightly in the wind. I stepped inside, and the smell of dust and decay filled my nostrils. Memories flooded back, Calder and I running through these halls. Our mother calling us for dinner. Our father reading the newspaper in his chair. All of it felt like a different lifetime. The flashlight beam came from the basement. I found the stairs and descended slowly, each step protesting with loud creaks. At the bottom, I could see the beam moving along the walls. Then a voice spoke, and my heart nearly stopped. Evelyn, it was Calder's voice, but different somehow, rougher, uncertain. I moved toward the voice, my own flashlight app casting shadows on the walls. A figure stood in the corner, near the old furnace. As I got closer, I could make out his features. It was Calder, but not the Calder I remembered. This man looked older, thinner, like he had been hollowed out from the inside. His face bore new scars, and his eyes held a wariness I had never seen before. Calder, my voice broke, he stepped back, pressing against the wall. Stay there. Don't come closer, it's me. It's Evelyn, your sister. Tears streamed down my face. I saw your tomb, it was empty. I got your call, I don't understand what's happening. He shook his head, looking confused and frightened. They told me, they said you weren't real. That you were dangerous, my heart cracked. Someone had twisted his memories, poisoned his mind against me. Who told you that? Who did this to you? Before he could answer, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Heavy, measured, deliberate. Detective Hale emerged from the shadows, and in his hand was a gun. Step away from him, Mrs. Marwood. Hale's voice was cold now, all pretense of concern gone. He pointed the gun at Calder. Not me, he needs to come with me. I moved in front of my brother without thinking. No, Hale's jaw tightened. You don't understand what you're protecting. He's not the man you remember. He's a malfunction in a very important project. The words hit me like physical blows. Malfunction, project. Calder wasn't a person to these people. He was an experiment. He's my brother. I said quietly but firmly, and he's coming home with me. Hale raised the gun slightly. For a moment, I thought he would shoot. Then footsteps pounded down the stairs, and another figure burst into the room. It was the man with the limp, the one Belinda had seen in my driveway. He threw himself between Hale and Calder, just as Hale fired. The tranquilizer dart, meant for my brother, hit the stranger instead. He collapsed immediately, Hale cursed. Moving forward, I didn't think. I grabbed an old piece of pipe from the floor and swung hard, catching Hale behind the knee. Hale went down with a scream, his gun clattering across the floor. I kicked it away, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Calder stared at me with wide eyes, looking torn between fear and recognition. We have to go, I said, grabbing his arm. He was weak, unsteady on his feet. I pulled him toward the stairs, supporting his weight behind us. Hale was struggling to stand, cursing and reaching for his phone. We stumbled up the stairs and out into the night. Sirens wailed in the distance. Growing closer, someone had called the police. Of course they had. Linnea probably had people watching the house. My car, I gasped, half dragging Calder across the overgrown yard. But as we reached it, headlights flooded the driveway. Police cruisers blocked the exit. We were trapped. I looked around desperately and spotted the old path into the woods. The one Calder and I used to take to reach the creek. Without hesitation, I pulled him toward it. The path was overgrown and hard to see in the darkness. But my feet remembered, behind us. Voices shouted and flashlights bobbed. We crashed through the undergrowth, branches tearing at our clothes. Calder struggled to keep up, his breathing labored. I can't, he gasped, keep going. I urged just a little further. The creek appeared ahead, moonlight glinting off its surface. I pulled Calder down the bank and into the shallow water. The cold shocked my system, but it would hide our scent from any dogs they might bring. We waded downstream, moving as quietly as possible. The voices behind us grew fainter. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, we reached the old stone bridge. Calder and I used to hide under it as children, playing pirates and explorers. I guided him beneath the arch, where the bank was dry and sheltered. We collapsed there, both of us soaking wet and shivering. Calder's teeth chattered. He looked at me in the dim light, and something in his expression changed. I remember this place, he whispered. We used to catch frogs here. Hope surged through me, yes. Every summer, you were better at it than me. He closed his eyes, tears sliding down his face. We huddled under the bridge as helicopter searchlights swept across the marsh. The beams passed over us twice, but the bridge's shadow kept us hidden. Calder's breathing had steadied, and he seemed more present somehow. They did something to me, he said quietly. After the accident, I took his hand. What accident? The car crash. I remember now, Linnea was driving. We argued about something important. Then the road, it was icy, we spun out. He pressed his fingers against his temples. I woke up in a white room, doctors everywhere. But they weren't treating me. They were studying me, my stomach turned. Where was Linnea? She was there sometimes. Watching, they said I was part of a program. That I would help save lives. But I heard them talking when they thought I was sedated. They were making copies. The word hung between us like a curse. Copies of you, he nodded, and of you. Evelyn, they said you were next. They needed your identity for something called Phase 3. Before I could process this, a voice spoke from the shadows. A woman's voice, my voice. A figure stepped into the moonlight beneath the bridge. My breath stopped. She looked exactly like me. Same height, same silver hair. Same green eyes. Even the small scar above my left eyebrow that I got falling off a bike at age 9 was there. She wore clothes similar to mine. Stood the way I stood. It was like looking into a mirror that had somehow become solid and stepped away from the glass. Hello, Evelyn, she said in my voice, perfectly matching my tone and inflection. Or should I say, hello, original. Calder tried to stand, but he was too weak. What are you? The woman smiled, tilting her head in a gesture I had made thousands of times. I'm what they call 87R Echo. The perfected version, all of Evelyn's memories, her mannerisms, her knowledge, but without the inconvenient emotions that make her hesitate. She took a step closer. You were supposed to die in the cabin fire last month. Your death certificate is already signed. I was meant to take your place seamlessly. My mind raced back. Last month, there had been a small fire in my kitchen, quickly contained. That fire wasn't an accident, I said, the pieces falling into place. Echo smiled approvingly, like a teacher whose student had finally understood the lesson. Very good, but you survived. Which complicated things. Now here we are, both existing when only one of us is supposed to. She pulled something from her jacket. A gun, sleek and black. They gave me this for emergencies. It's identical to the one you lost that night in the cabin. She was right, I had owned a gun for protection. But it disappeared after the fire. I thought it had been destroyed. She had memorized my life down to the smallest detail. You can't win this, Echo continued. Even if you run, even if you hide. I exist now, I can be you better than you can. Younger, stronger, more efficient. Calder squeezed my hand weakly. I felt his pulse fluttering against my palm. Wait, I said, stalling for time. If you want my life, you need my memories. The real ones, not what they programmed into you. And I'm the only one who knows what really happened in 1987. Echo's expression flickered, just for a moment. Uncertainty crossed her features. What happened in 1987? I took a slow breath. This was a gamble, but it was all I had. Our parents didn't die in a car accident. They were murdered by the same organization that created you. My mother tried to stop Project 87R. Calder's grip on my hand tightened. She found out what they were doing. He added, his voice gaining strength. Experiments on people, creating replacements. She was going to expose everything. Echo lowered the gun slightly. That's not in my programming. They said your parents died in an accident on Highway 87. That's what they wanted everyone to believe. I continued, but I survived that night. I saw what really happened. I'm the only witness left, which is why they need me erased. Echo's face went through a series of rapid expressions. Confusion, anger, fear. If what you're saying is true, then I'm not your replacement. Her voice trembled. I'm your executioner. The tool they're using to finally finish what they started. The gun shook in her hand. I slowly stood, hands raised. You don't have to be their tool. You have my memories, my personality. That means you have my capacity to choose. Echo backed away, shaking her head. No, choice is for originals. I'm designed for purpose they gave you. I said gently, but you're feeling something right now. Aren't you? Doubt, fear, anger. Those aren't programming glitches. That's humanity breaking through. She looked down at the gun like it had become a foreign object. They said feelings would fade, that I would become more efficient. They lied. I took a careful step closer. Listen to what you're feeling. Trust it. Headlights appeared on the road above the bridge. Voices shouted orders. A dozen armed figures appeared on both sides of the creek. Echo turned, and I saw real terror on her face. My face, they're here for both of us now. She whispered, if I don't bring you in, they'll destroy me, I don't want to die. The admission hung in the air between us. This woman who looked like me, who was made to replace me, didn't want to die. I made a decision in that moment, one that felt both terrifying and right. I took Echo's hand. You're not going to die. Not today. Calder struggled to his feet beside me. Evelyn, what are you doing? I looked at my brother, then at Echo. She's a victim just like us. And I'm done letting them win. I turned to Echo. Listen to me. You want my identity? Take it. Lead them away. Let them think you caught us. She stared at me. Why would you do that? Because you deserve a chance to choose your own life. And because it's the only way to expose what they've done. Understanding dawned in her eyes. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and became me completely. Target secured. She shouted toward the soldiers. Evelyn Marwood in custody, moving to extraction point. The soldiers converged on her position. In the chaos, Calder and I slipped into the deeper shadows beneath the bridge. We crawled along the bank, hidden by darkness and confusion. Hours later, we emerged onto a highway miles away. A trucker stopped when he saw Calder's condition. As we drove away in the back of his truck, I looked back one last time, somewhere behind us. Echo was buying our freedom with her own. A week later, news broke about Project 87R. Anonymous documents flooded the media. Linnea was arrested. Detective Hale disappeared. Echo's body was never found. Some nights, I swear I see her reflection in windows. Not haunting me but guarding me. A life born from mine, finally free. I survived Phase 3, not because I fought harder, but because I learned that even the darkest truths can lead us back to ourselves. Now to the lovely viewers of this channel. Got a story? Let's tell it together. Here on this channel, your voice matters. If you have a personal story, a revenge moment, a betrayal twist, or even an idea that you think would make our narratives sharper, more emotional, or more entertaining, share it with us. Tell us what themes you want more of. What twists keep you hooked? What parts of our stories hit you the hardest? Or what you'd love to hear next? Drop your thoughts, stories, and suggestions in the comments below. Let's build this amazing community together, one powerful story at a time. Your story could be the next one featured. Don't be shy, we're listening.